writer and a poet, a songwriter, artist, actor, pianist, and we dance. And so Ager is a person that has a larger part of the brain. It's called the anterior cingulate cortex. And they did autopsies on people that were super agers. They were able to have the memory of a 50-year-old, even though they were 80 years old. And they had a thicker, so this is the right there is the prefrontal cortex, and this is the anterior, what we call it, cingulate cortex. And so they have these von Economo neurons, and these are neurons associated with being empathetic, controlling your emotions, self-control, that type of thing. And so these are really large neurons, and they bounce around in the brain. They're kind of a spindle shape. So anyway, they found out these people who had these larger, and they, even though they had in their brain evidence of Alzheimer's, they did not have the symptoms of Alzheimer's. And this is what we're going to learn, is how you can prevent Alzheimer's, but also if you develop it, how you can work around it. That's what this does. So I came up with this problem with me when my wife died 4 years ago after 50 years of marriage. And my von Economo neuron just came, boom, alive. And so I came up with 5 steps. I would re-educate myself, and I created a university called Barry University. And then I reframed to treat myself like a power system. Now, I was an expert all over the world, and I wrote 2 books, how to have a more efficient utility power system. And so I said to myself, when I started taking care of my wife, I'm going to treat myself like a power system and make myself more energy efficient, even though I'm 76 years old. And I found this improved my relationships, it grew me spiritually, and it taught me how to meditate, which is really using those von Economo neurons, because they're all about focusing. So what is Barry University? So I came up with, this is, Drabinsky has different principles when he worked with gifted children and adults. And so he said it's important to educate yourself. Like Einstein said, I had to unlearn all the things I did in school and teach myself how to think. And that's what this does. Process of education oneself of an inner psychic transformation. So I did these 2 paintings. I did this painting of myself painting Pinots in a vineyard on a wine barrel lid. Put a faucet in here, and then I painted my face on the wine glass. And this is all based on a poem that I wrote, because every one of my paintings has a poem. And so this poem is, thine take not what is mine, make what is mine divine, so that my meditation time ferments me into fine wine. So that is what I did. And I concluded the educational system wants to make us one way. They want to make us monomass. But we're not designed to be monomass. We're whole people. So I decided to be a polymath. And that polymath does many different things. It's like Leonardo da Vinci. And this is a painting for me I have a keyboard, an iPad, I waited too long, and I have a journal and a painting. There's 4 different ways I'm expressing myself. And this is me going up the path. This right here on the left side is a tasting room of this particular wine place. This is a vineyard in Oregon, and this is a wine-making place. Okay? So I wrote this poem. My fruit were the grapes of math that became the grapes of wrath. Because I'm an empath. I choose the vine to wine path who has the grapes of a polymath, rather than the vine to dine path that has the grapes of a monomath. So when I wrote my 2 books, I just regurgitated what I read and what I was taught in school. But when I decide to become a polymath, I don't regurgitate, I ferment what I learn. And it changes me, and it changes what I learn. That's the difference. So I then decided to reframe myself. And so I was in school, I learned how to simulate the electrical power system on the computer in 1968. That's when I got my master's degree. So I was using computers, and they were these stacks of punch cards. And if you mixed them up, it wasn't any good. You had to throw them away and start all over. This is before we had laptops and all that other stuff, okay? But a power system, in the case of Bonneville, it's up in Oregon, has a hydroelectric dam that generates electricity. And it transmitted on a transmission line to your home that has a meter that measures how much electricity you use each day. So this is a power system, and I said to myself, I'm going to treat myself like a power system. So how did I do that? I think the next slide helps us understand that. This is a series of paintings I made. This is Bonneville Dam. This is a transmission line. This is Mount Hood. And this is Drabinsky's 5 overexcitabilities. Everybody know them? They're psychomotor, imaginational, sensual, intellectual, and emotional. That's these 5 right here. And I learned these 5 by treating myself like a power system, and then I can go to the 5 levels of positive disintegration. So let me show you what that is. Let's go down here a little bit more. So I treat my brain like an electrical generator. Now my brain uses electricity to send signals to my body. I mean, for instance, if I want to do like this, you can measure on my head the electromagnetic field that my brain produces even before my finger moves. And they do that. They've measured it, and they know it has a certain signature that is associated with moving my little index finger on my right hand. So there is a circuit that goes all the way through my nervous system, out through my arm, tells that muscle to move. So, this is Bonneville Dam. It has all these generators, and I put my brain in place of one of the generators. So what does that mean to have your brain treated? Well, so I came up with the concept, if you're this part of the brain that the super agers have, is called the cingulate, remember I said anterior cingulate cortex, that this regulates your thoughts, your emotions, and your senses. So it's like the water coming in through the penstock in the dam. Because the water in the dam is really your emotions. And by regulating your emotions, you can regulate your thoughts and what you accomplish with your thoughts. So I treat my brain like the imagination OE. I treat my nervous system like the intellectual part of my OE. And I treat my muscles like the psychomotor OE. And I treat my senses, the sensual part, as the meters. So what's important, I use my senses to give me information that makes my emotions motivate me to behave in a way to accomplish the goals I want to accomplish. What often happens if we're gifted and overexcitable, we might let our senses may cause us to have emotions that cause us to behave in a way that does not accomplish our emotions. It might even counter our emotions. You know, we might jump around and do a lot of stuff, but you know, Superman, he knows when to fly and he knows when to land. And that's what you do when you learn how to use your system like a power system. So, I wrote a poem. I think I wrote, let's see, we'll do it here. And I call it Flow. Like a hydroelectric power system, I need to ground myself to water, to ground myself to water flow. When I'm on the go, or at home, when I'm in control, that my power may flow in the direction I want to go, from one creative act to another, freely in places with people who bring power and peace that flows from me to them and then flows from them to me. As we ride the current of our creativity to our ocean of emotion. So the key is basically to get you into a flow. And so you train yourself at home to be in a flow state so that when you're on the road, you can be in a flow state when you face a situation that's out of your control. That's what this does. So let's move on here. And by applying this concept, I found my relationship changed. For example, before my wife died, she was my rose, and in Oregon, or in vineyards, they plant roses at the end of the vineyard row to protect the Pinot grapes. They do this because the bugs and the mildew attack the roses before they attack the Pinots. They're kind of like the canary in the coal mine. And so by planting these roses, it protects and kind of filters, and then the vineyard man can come out and protect the Pinots from being attacked, because he's got a warning signal with the roses. They don't need this anymore, but it was very popular, you know, over thousands of years. But when my wife died, I no longer had a person to protect me, a person to tell me when to turn on this emotion or when to turn off that emotion. So I had to teach myself to do that. And so this is an illustration of how I did it. This is called me washing away my tears. So I wrote a poem based on that. And let's see here, move on down here. So the first one, where she's a rose, I said, my care flows to my rose, to compose me and my rose, even though others oppose how I care for my rose. uncaring bugs infect my rose. I wrote forth my rose with my pinos. When noisy birds pick at my skin, I must protect what's within. Bring calming sounds through my stem. The falcons over them. Blast loud sounds from my cannon. When stinging wasps come near, I must not fear. I must remove their nests from them before they pierce my skin. So I learned how to brush away my tears. Oh, yeah. I learned how to brush away my tears. I learned how to brush away my tears, and that's what I'm doing in this painting. I'm meditating on the lake, and I'm painting, and that takes away the pain. So it's based on this poem. I looked to the Lord to dry my tears, lost my wife of 50 years. I looked up to see only clouds, she's not there. I looked to the right to see empty space, she's not there. I look to the left, I see no trace, she's not there. I look down, I see only ground, she's not there. I look to the lake, I see only water, she's not there. I look front to see only tears, she's not there. I take my brush, I touch my eyes, brush away my tears. I look in my heart, I see her there. I hear her say, I was here all along, Barry, be strong. I hear her cry, I love you, your tears I will dry. So this helped me to grow spiritually. And this is kind of an illustration of what I have on my head is a lighthouse with a spiral staircase. So there's a lighthouse near my home in Oregon. It's in Newport, and it has a spiral staircase. And so it's important to grow spiritually in a spiral rather than linearly. Growth comes from trying something and failing, trying something else and failing until you get it right. So when you're in a spiral staircase, you can see where you've been, where you're going, and where you're at the same time. So basically, Dubinsky's theory of positive disintegration is looking where you've been. I don't want to do those things that keep me going around in circles. I want to stop doing those things. I want to start doing those things that are going to take me where I want to go. So if you keep going, Einstein says insanity is doing the same thing over and expect different results. So the spiral staircase, T.S. Eliot wrote a poem about this. And so it's all about growing like a nautilus, like a honeycomb, and like a nebula in the galaxy. They all grow in a spiral. And that's what Drabinsky talks about here. Growth through empathy, autonomy, and authenticity, because we're able to eliminate the things that don't serve us and do the things that serve us. And let's see now. This I'm going to go on down here a little bit. And so, my next slide is meditation. So what I learned through meditation is when I started doing yoga, I found that I would be affected by sound very much. Highly gifted people are very much auditorily affected. And so I wrote a poem about this experience here. So the yoga teacher liked to play music while I was doing yoga. And this would distract me. This would cause me to be agitated. And it would distract me from yoga. And so what I did is I wrote a poem. I'm going to find it here. The yoga teacher says, take the tree stance. I focus on the vanishing point of the Pinot grapes. My skin is thin like them. I hear the music sound. It knocks me around. I focus on the fountain flow. My mind calms down. So I found water, and the flow of water really is calming. So I thought, well, the answer is for me to move next to a lake, in Lake Oswego in Portland. But it was noisy there, and that was self-defeating. So I thought, well, I'll put in a spa in my backyard, and I'll have water all the time flowing. But I don't know if my deck could handle it. So I thought, well, I'll just go to the river. But it was really a hassle. The Willamette River wasn't nearby. So I got this idea. I put 4K TVs in all through my house, and I play an amp of a waterfall and a river, and I have no desire to go to a river anymore. Totally took away that desire. Tricked my brain thinking that there was a waterfall in my living room. And this next picture here is an illustration of how I converted myself into wine. So I wrote a poem about that. Fine Geisters make me into wine that is balanced and benign, that comes from my belief in balancing my fruit, terroir, and meat. Plant a hedge next to my feet, keep out the boars and foxes I meet. Thank you for the golden spiral of my rose that shows me how to grow my Pinots. So back when Bonneville Dam was built, there was a problem with all this electricity in 1930s during the Depression. They hired a guy by name of Guthrie, and he was to promote electricity from the Columbia River for Bonneville Power. So they hired him, and he wrote songs. So one of the songs that Woody Guthrie wrote was called Roll On Columbia. It goes like this: roll on Columbia, roll on. Roll on Columbia, roll on. Your power is turning our darkness to dawn. So roll on Columbia, roll on. Roll on Columbia, roll on. Your power is turning our darkness to dawn. So roll on Columbia, roll on. Green Douglas firs where the waters cut through. Down the wild mountain canyons she flew. Canadian Northwest to the ocean so blue. Roll on Columbia, roll on. Other great rivers add power to you. Yakima, Snake, and Klickitat too. Sandy Willamette, Hood River too. So roll on Columbia, roll on. Tom Jefferson's vision would not let him rest. An empire he saw in the Pacific Northwest. St. Louis and Clark, and he did the rest. So roll on Columbia, roll on. Tom, so there on your banks we fought many a fight. Sheridan boys in the brick blockhouse that night. They saw us in death, but never in flight. So roll on Columbia, roll on. At Bonneville, now there are ships in the locks. The waters have risen and cleared off the rocks. Shiploads of plenty will steam past the docks. So roll on Columbia, roll on. And so on by the river is Grand Coulee Dam, the mightiest thing ever built by a man to run the greatest factories and water the land. So roll on Columbia, roll on. Those mighty men labor by day and by night, marching their strength against the river's wild flight. Through rapids and falls, they won the hard fight. So roll on Columbia, roll on. So I decided I had to flow on like the Columbia River. And so I'm a power system. So I decided to build a bridge, I call my dancing bridge, and I have the Bonneville Dam and the Columbia River flowing through my head, and I call this song Flow On, Barry, Flow On. Because flow on is really the key to being a happy, gifted, super ager. Flow on, Barry, flow on. Flow on, Barry, flow on. Your power makes me strong, so flow on, Barry, flow on. Flow on, Barry, flow on. Your power makes me strong, so flow on, Barry, flow on. Your floodgates I let my wife control. When she left, you did overflow. I could not control your raging flow, so flow on, Barry, flow on. Other people drain power from you. Parents, peers, and preachers too. Pedagogues and partners too. Flow on, Barry, flow on. Drabinsky's vision would not let me rest. A better me he saw growing in my chest. He identified my overexcitabilities, and I did the rest. So flow on, Barry, flow on. It's on your banks I fought many a fight. I would lay in bed almost every night. I saw my wife's death, but never in fright. Flow on, Barry, flow on. At Bonneville Power, I saw power system deficiencies. Told utilities how to improve their system efficiencies. Now I create ways to use my potential energies. So flow on, Barry, flow on. Now your floodgates I let God control, that he may create in me who I want to flow. Let a sun caring and calm I wish to grow, so flow on, Barry, flow on. Many mighty men try to get in me to conform, but with a renewed mind I will transform. My overexcitabilities will into creative outlets I perform. So flow on, Barry, flow on. So that's what I made this painting, and I wrote this song about flow on, and then since my wife died, I've been doing yoga, playing the piano, listening to TED Talks, and painting all in one session. So it's based on the concept that I read that rats had better brains when they had a labyrinth with a lot of toys. So I made my living room with a lot of toys. It's got a DSX 660 Yamaha computer-based training piano. It's got my yoga mat. It's got all my paints in my painting. It's got my MacBook Pro. And it's got my iPads. And it's got my 4K TVs. It's got them all there in my living room. So I can move from one to the other. And I guarantee you, this is building new circuits in my brain. So what I'm talking about, these von Economo neurons I told you about earlier, the social neurons, the empathic neurons, that turn against you if you don't use them right. So when I started doing all these things, using these neurons in my privacy, rather than use them so that I could use them when I was in public for my benefit. A good example of this. So I started taking up drama. And I go to a church about 300 people. And they decided to put on a play about the 30s when the church was taken over by Hitler. And so I played a character that was at these rallies trying to get people to be part of the new United Hitler Church. The Imperial Church, they call it. And I would get up and I would give this speech. And it was really liked, there's all these people. And so I got, really excited. I put on my Superman energy. And, but afterwards, Sabrina and I had to go shop for groceries. And I was tired. She was tired. She did a little bit of acting too. She acted as one of the, what do you call it? Spatial players, right. So, we went to Safeway, and I parked the car, and she went into Safeway, And I was just waiting for her. And this man pulls up. And he parks his car across from me and he sees me. He kind of looks at me funny. And I was kind of dozing off because I was really tired. So here comes Sabrina. She knocks on the back of my trunk, and I get out and I start loading the groceries from the cart to the trunk. And I turn around and there's that man standing right next to her. And he says to her, he says to me, he says, "What's it like to lay around while she's doing all the work?" What? So I have wanted to accomplish 3 things. I wanted him to go away, stay away, and not come back. And I visualized him doing that. But I didn't want to provoke him. I didn't want to yell at him. That was what my tendency was, you know. So I give him a dirty death stare. And he went away. Then when I went into the trunk, and I loaded, and I said, "Mind your own business." He said, "What'd you say? What'd you say?" I didn't say anything after that, because I didn't want him to come back. And he just left us alone. So this is an illustration of how I use my empathy, how I use my vision to control the situation in the moment. Because I was not expecting this. Because I was training myself to be a super Ager. So this is really what it's all about. Is training yourself and stretching yourself. Every book I read, every article, it's exercising your brain, it's exercising your body. Your brain's purpose is to move you. It's not to set you, it's to move you. So we all need to train the brain to tell the body to move, and for the body to talk to the brain, and you listen to it through your senses when you're not moving the right way. This is really all that all amounts to. And so these super Agers, they, in the latter part of their lives, have a real positive attitude, and they can still keep their memory. So my latest painting, one of my latest paintings, is called Moonlight Yoga. So I painted myself on the Willamette River, dancing on a piano to the tune of Moonlight Sonata. And I have a paintbrush in my hand, so I'm painting, and the moon's shining and reflecting. So I think another thing gifted like to do, they like to combine the senses. And so I wrote a poem that does that. It says, I found my path, creating patterns of a polymath. I stroke my brush into moonbeams. My feet flow like mountain streams. My body undulates in waves of serenity. The sound of moonlight creates synchronicity. Energy streams from my eyes and hands, melting away patterns that the world demands. I transcend all my past and future time as I freeze and make the present mine. Converting my potential energies into creative expressions of synergies, I master the power flow of my mind, being the person God designed. So that's what it, and so now, Sabrina and I go dancing 2 or 3 nights a week, and we like to dance to the hip machine. So the band electrifies us, and we electrify the band. So I'd like to leave you with my latest doing is a painting that I did, and I call it the Dancing Path, because we're gonna, no matter who you are, or how rich you are, or how famous you are, we're gonna have tragedy in our lives, and it's gonna fall on us like a meteor. So what I did is I created a painting that I want to share with you. And it's at a place called Silver Creek Falls in Oregon. And I'm dancing. This is on, I'm Irish, and so is Sabrina. And so we're dancing on a path. I don't know if you can hear it. And so you can see it's moving. And then she's moving. And here's a meteorite, and I'm playing the piano. Oops, there we go. I'm going to turn up the sound here. Find out where you do that. Because I think it's, and I'm going to see here. Here we go. Now play that. Thank you very much. So I think we got 4 minutes left. Any questions or anything? But this is kind of, my thing is to take all this science about von Economo neurons and anterior cingulate cortex and superagers and all this stuff that we get them bombarded by and convert it into something that we can touch and we can see, we can feel. We can feel ourselves. We can hear what we hear. And that's really what I'm trying to communicate, these concepts. So Confucius says, change does not come from words or rules, but from images and symbols. So images and symbols, they change us, but words don't. We can pour them out, and you've got to be constantly pouring out words at you to change you. So anybody have any question? Thank you very much. Oh.
I've got a question. Have you ever made like greeting cards out of your paintings, or to just, I don't know, like, do you sell your paintings? Or?
No, I haven't sold them. I like to tell stories with them, but I have sent my paintings to my grandchildren and my children. They don't really like my grandchildren like them, but my children don't like them because they're, this is kind of weird for Dad. He's an engineer. He's not supposed to be doing stuff like this. This is something, you know, that I was not like when my wife was alive. And she was the artist. She did paint, but she wouldn't paint metaphors. She would paint just, you know, what she tried to paint beautiful things like a lake and a duck taking off and stuff like this. So I write poetry and everything, but they're all sensing types. They're not intuitive types. My wife on a Myers-Briggs was an ISFP, and I'm an INTJ, or an ENTJ sometimes. So I'm the opposite of what she was. We went to a counselor when I was going through a career, and she was on one side and I was on the other. And he says, "How do you guys live together?" It's love. So the last thing she said to me before she died, she said, "I love you." And I said, "I love you." Love transcends differences. Are you next, or? No.
I think it is.
Oh, we're together.
Oh, we're together.
You should bring your artwork next year to Sings and exhibit it somehow.
Where's
What's
it
it
gonna
gonna
be?
Houston.
Houston.
Houston? Is that, where are you?